Hello, everyone. It's
Don, you're muted on
I'm not
StreamYard.
sure what's going on with my camera or my connectivity, but I'll deal with it. It's weird. I don't know what's happening. So anyways, what I was saying is we will probably go back to one live show a day. So I hope that is okay with you guys. You don't get upset. Everyone's like, there's so much going on. Why aren't you live? Anyway, we'll explain. We're changing things up a little bit. But since I have connectivity now, let's get to this. I have a very special show for you guys today on Lemon Live at 5. Someone who I've known for a long time, but we'll talk about that. We have been talking at length in just the past couple of shows, really, just about how people are checking out on the news. I think our most streamed or how do you say, most watched show has been the one where we said people are quitting the news cold turkey. And we got confirmation of that, not only from you guys telling us that you are, but also from the ratings, and we'll talk about that. So Americans are checking out on the news, and it is because they're making them sick, they're saying, physically sick. And it's giving them anxiety disorders. It's pushing them into panic attacks. In extreme cases, it's even making some folks really contemplate harming themselves. And that's where my next guest is going to come in just a second. So it's no wonder that people have been tuning off Morning Joe and canceling their New York Times subscriptions and so on, Washington Post subscriptions, and so on and so on. We'll see if that lasts. I think this time there's going to be some real, there's going to be, it's going to last at least this time, because people have been predicting the demise of broadcast and cable news for a long time, and it hasn't happened. But I think this one is going to stick. And we shall see. Today's a very special episode, and I want to chat with my dear old friend, someone who has seen from the inside just how anxiety-provoking cable broadcast news, working in the newsroom, can be, working in this business. And he also knows how to go about healing, a healing journey to recovery from it. Who am I talking about? Kendis Gibson joins us now. Kendis is a 4-time Emmy Award-winning journalist. He's currently the early evening anchor at PIX, WPIX, we call it PIX here in New York, PIX TV. He's the author of a fantastic new book. It's called 5 Trips, an investigative journey into mental health, psychedelic healing, and saving a life. So, Kendis, how are you?
How are you? So good to see you.
Kendis, you said, hey, Don, I have a new book coming out. I was away, and then sure enough, shit hit the fan. Kendis, do you remember the first time we met? First of all, you're okay. You're okay now, right? Before
I'm okay.
Okay, we'll talk about
it. You're always fighting demons on any given day, but I figured out a way to operate. I'm okay.
Okay. Do you remember the first time we met?
I know it was in Philadelphia.
Yep. It was Philadelphia. There was some big breaking news story where I had to come in and do the early morning shift. Something happened. I don't remember exactly what it was.
And I'm going to forget the detail, but I think there was a hostage situation at a hospital or something like that went on for maybe days.
It was national news.
Yes.
I remember I did a hit for like NBC News or something. And so they're like, can you do the morning, blah, 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 blah. And you walked over to my microwave truck then, or it may have been a satellite truck. I don't remember.
It's way back.
Yeah. And you said, hey, someone said that there's someone new in town and he looks like me. And I just wanted to meet you and see who you are. And then we looked at each other and started laughing. It's like, we don't look anything like
and I had hair then, and we did not look alike at all.
You worked for the Fox station then, right?
I was at the Fox station.
Yeah. And I was at the NBC station.
Morning.
So anyway, this was 99, 2000, something like that. 99, I believe.
It doesn't seem like it was that long ago.
Yeah, well, yes, to me it does. So, Kendis, let's talk about this, all right? Because You know, I said that you said that the toxic environment in news made you sick. It also made you. We have to watch our language here. Want to unalive yourself, right? Right. And there was an attempt. And I think that Americans are feeling similar to you, although they don't have to work in this environment every day. They are exposed to it. Let's just talk about these stats, and then we'll talk about what happened to you, what people can do, because I want this to be a healing experience.
Yeah.
So just since this is just some stats for the news, I'll do cable here. I don't have the broadcast numbers. MSNBC has averaged 550,000 viewers since election day, a 39% decline compared to the network's average in October. In prime time, MSNBC audience has declined 53%. That's according to Nielsen data. CNN, which has struggled with ratings for months, has also had falling viewership since the election. The cable news network has averaged 413,000 viewers since last Wednesday, or since the election. 22% decline from its October averages. In prime time, its viewership decline now stands at 43%. I think it may be even 47% now. Engagement on social media with news articles cratered over the past 3 weeks, dropping 50% since the election, despite more articles being published. Engagement is measured by interactions with articles posted, which includes likes, comments, and shares. And then you have some numbers you have some numbers, and I have some numbers that we're going to talk about as it relates to mental health, Black people in media, and then what you're doing, your plant-based medicine, your psychedelic medicine.
Yeah.
It's a toxic environment to watch for viewers, let alone work in. What happened to you?
I mean, I guess it's a toxic environment if, depending on your political stance, the way the business has gone. I'm sure Fox viewers are feeling quite fine tuning in nowadays. But for my situation, listen, Don, we show up on people's worst day of their lives, and then we leave. We are at somebody's house when they're going through immense tragedy. We were at that hostage situation together where I believe 2 people were killed. That's the worst day of the lives for somebody, and we leave. As the years go on, you know, we're taking on shrapnel. We don't necessarily leave those stories behind. If you have any sort of empathetic soul, you're still kind of taking on that shrapnel after the other, and you're exposed to it constantly. And so that in itself can have an impact on many of our psyches and our mental health in the news business. For me, I had an underlying depression throughout my entire life, like severe depression that I worked with using different SSRIs, antidepressants, as well as therapy. I had childhood sexual abuse, as did you. And so there was an underlying level of trauma and depression that went through. And then when you add to that a different environment where at the network level, it can be really, really tough sometimes, where you're fighting constantly to get on top and trying to get on that show. And you're trying, when you get on top, trying to stay on top, and you are working different hours, and you're still forced to kind of sing and dance and smile on any given day. All of that can add up over the years. And that's what added up for me and came to a head in October 2018 when I contemplated suicide.
I had no idea. And, you know, even though I didn't hear from you, I don't hear from a lot of people for a while, because, you know, you get so involved in work, right? And then we're often in different cities. You moved around. You were in Los Angeles, you were in Philadelphia, were you ever in DC? Weren't you in DC?
I was in DC. Yeah.
In DC, you're in New York, and then you were in Florida. And so sometimes we lose sight of each other, but still I considered you a friend, and I had no idea. And you are friends with my friend, Mike Woods.
Yes.
You said found you, correct? Yeah. Okay. Let me read about this. So you say here, this is a passage from the book. You said I was, and then we'll talk about how you got here. I was lying in a dark hole on the wooden floor, sprawled across a yoga mat, my head resting on a tiny pillow, deep in the Amazonian jungle in Peru, at least 3-hour boat ride from any other human. I was in a grand room and doubled as a food hall, bar, and church. The metal roof on the building was alive with sounds of every nocturnal creature slamming into it in the jungle cacophony. Knowing I was at the precipice about to jump into the next phase, the shaman overseeing this jungle seance. So this is you. This is you in
This
the
is
book.
me, ayahuasca.
Okay, that's ayahuasca. I don't want to talk. I don't want to talk about that. This is where you were telling me in the book that you write about that you had this experience, and it's a long thing to. You had this experience where you were working overnight at ABC, and finally you got sort of the coveted job, and you started to work for Good Morning America. Robin Roberts welcomed you with open arms. You said Michael Strahan, and who else was it? Was it there? Was it George?
George was there as
George,
well, and all very welcoming and kind, and to this day the same.
Yeah.
Well.
Okay. So you said that you worked for that and you had gotten the brass ring, right? But then it became so toxic. You got involved in this workplace sort of racial thing that happened in 2020. And so I think you were like sort of on a merry-go-round and you couldn't jump off.
Well, I wouldn't say that it got toxic. Like, I didn't knowingly know what was happening behind the scenes.
As often, that's how it happens for us. And then you can't defend yourself because your contract says you're not allowed to make public statements. You know what I'm saying?
Are you speaking for a friend?
All the contracts say you cannot make a public statement, and if you do, you could lose your livelihood and your money. But people don't understand that in the general public, that you can't do. You have a contract that says you can't do it. Also, you cannot work after a job if they let you go, or even if your contract is up. You have what do you call it again?
NDA.
No. Where you can't work.
Oh, the non-compete.
You have a non-compete. And so people are like, oh, you can't find a job. And it's like, no, I can't get a job because it's like breaking the law.
So one of the things, like at ABC, things were going great. And there was a period done in 2016. I think it was after the and I get them all confused at this point, but you'll know, the St. Louis riots that took place. I forget what.
And Michael Ferguson, yeah.
And it was another hot summer, and President Obama was on his way out, and he was planning to do a town hall with ABC News to talk about police brutality. We had also had that shooting of several police officers in Dallas that had taken place. And so the country was yet again, back then, we've had many of them since, precipice. And so President Obama was doing this town hall, and one member, I forget who it was, a Black correspondent, walked by the planning meeting for it and noticed that there wasn't a single Black producer in that meeting as they're planning this town hall about police violence against the Black community. And then David went on and continued to have the press conference with, or the town hall with President Obama.
David Muir.
They had Deborah Roberts was supposed to speak, but did not get a speaking slot. And then they had Jamel Hill from ESPN at the time, part of the ABC Disney family. And she did get to ask a couple of questions, but that was it when it came to representation. So we had an email that went out to all the Black correspondents and anchors at ABC after we saw this play out, and said, listen, if there was a senior or executive producer who was Black at that meeting, there would have been more representation on camera of some of the Black correspondents and anchors. They would have felt that it was important. So we used that as a call to action. And we started meeting from that point and demanding that the executives meet with us to kind of say, listen, we need to have brown and Black executive producers or senior producers and above at ABC. At the time, the network did not have any. Not on GMA, not on Nightline, not on any one of their shows was there a senior or above of color. And so we kept meeting with them every 3 months, and they'd say, oh, we're trying to find this person. We're trying to find this person. This person turned down our contract. This person turned down our contract. And it would go on for several years. And I think in that time, we got one person who became a senior producer to Nightline added to the shows. What I didn't know that was happening behind the scenes, Don, because I had plenty of time Mara Schiavocampo, as you know, Mara, who was a correspondent. She had plenty of time as well. And so we were the ones who were the liaisons between the bosses and the busier, richer, more occupied other anchors and correspondents. And we'd set up all the meetings. Mara's contract was not renewed. I started noticing that, but I didn't realize what was going on. I started noticing that all of a sudden these stories that I would pitch for Good Morning America that were pretty much catnip for GMA and all the other shows were being turned down. At a behind the scenes shoot with Lewis Hamilton, who was in the midst of his 7-win championship Formula One run at the time, where we were going to go to Montreal and be behind the scenes and show him and interview with him. And nobody responded to the emails about that. That's, again, catnip. Behind the scenes with Maluma, who's the type of story and type of
enormous.
Yeah.
That's when he was like a skyrocketing to the top.
Exactly. We were going on his first stadium tour across the U.S. and they were like, "No, we'll pass on it." So my stories weren't being picked up. I noticed that my GMA hits started disappearing, and it's at this time that I'm now in year 3 on the overnight hours. My health was deteriorating. We sent emails saying, "Hey, this is having an impact on my mental health." And while many other co-anchors came and went and had issues with their health and were allowed off the show, I was not. And it wasn't until hindsight, Don, that I realized when I pulled the numbers after I left, in the first 2 years before our first diversity meeting that I helped to organize, I had 212 appearances on Good Morning America. In the last 2 years, I had 8. And as you know, with many of these TV shows or broadcast networks, if you're not on Good Morning America, the Today shows, those morning shows that make the money, your value to the network is not much. So it also contributed to my psyche declining because my self-worth was really deteriorating there at the network. It's a lot.
Because I know what's up, and it's hard for people to understand. I knew exactly what was going on when you said that, and the same thing also happens politically as well. If you look at the people now, most of the people who are getting opportunities in news, especially cable news, are conservatives, are they're Trumpers, and the folks who speak out against, are at least who hold people's feet to the fire, are, you know, they don't get those opportunities. And so when people talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and they say, "Oh, you know, this is affirmative action." No, it's real. Those things are real. And there's not a lot of representation in the news business, but also I think that this transcends the news business and it goes to other corporations and companies, and people just don't understand it. They're so down on diversity and equity and inclusion or whatever, yet has its issues. But usually it's a good thing because it's about representation, and America is more than just about white conservatives, especially right now.
Yeah. And listen, you know me from a long time ago, and I don't know if even to this day, I don't know if there was racism involved in all of this. I don't know what is inside a person's heart. All I know is that their actions, inadvertently or purposely, led me to a really, really dark place where I wanted to unlive, as you call it. And at the end of the day, all we were trying to do, like, I was trying to help the company, and I felt as if I was helping the company by trying to get some diversity and some diverse voices and people there behind the scenes. But that was on deaf ears. I will tell you, though, after the scandal broke with the senior vice president of news, Barbara Fedita, they were all of a sudden able to find plenty of minorities to fill a lot of positions. So at least I'm thankful for that part.
Barbara Fedita has denied, right, this stuff. Am I correct or no?
Yeah, so Barbara had released a statement just kind of pointing out to the number, and numbers are large, the number of brown and black people that she has promoted, she has hired over the years, including myself. She hired me at CBS News and then hired me again at ABC News. But as I point out in the book 5 Trips, like, the history books are littered with people who over the years have hired people and whether they're forced into labor or hired people, as long as it benefited their bottom line.
You write about all of this as it was happening, and then it becomes public. You get a call from Yashar Ali, who says, "We have this story. We heard what was happening in a meeting at ABC News. Listen, someone on Fernando Senegal says, I am in advertising, and it's so common in my industry. It's common in all industries. And listen, Fernando, listen, trust us, we know. And I think we probably know better than anyone, because we are also disseminating this information, and we're criticizing people for discrimination or not having representation. And then we're like, I can't believe I'm sitting here doing this, when if people could only see what the newsroom looks like. You know what I mean? What the staff looks like, what the lack, especially in management, what that looks like, what the corporation looks like, what the corporation's political stand and stripes are. The whole thing, making money. It's like, it's a whole thing that you're in the middle of it, and you want to have integrity, but it's hard to sit there and criticize. I'm just making this up. I'm not saying they have an issue, a Nabisco or a Coke or Pepsi or whatever it is, when you're like, oh, damn. I'm sitting here and the same shit's happening where I am. So what then do I do? You said, so you reached rock bottom. After you got the call, the story comes out. You made a statement, right? The story comes out.
I made a statement.
Robin sent you a nice email saying, basically saying, congratulations, we stand behind you, we support you, blah, 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 blah. But then this is when you take your life. This is when you want to take your life after that, correct?
So I spiraled until 2018, and then I decided I needed to get off the shift no matter what, and I was going to take another job, and I took another job, went to MSNBC, and was a weekend anchor there.
I remember that. So
then George Floyd was murdered in Minnesota, and a week later is when this Yashar Ali story broke. And it returned me quickly back into that dark spot that I was at ABC. It was kind of almost like, did you ever see the movie The Usual Suspects?
Of course I did.
Yeah. So you saw the ending. It was sort of like
where the clues started coming, like from the bottom of the coffee mug and all the crap.
Yes. It was the Kaiser Soze moment, where once the headlines came out, I realized, oh, is that why my emails were ignored? What were my Good Morning America hits? Pull those numbers. Why was I told about not wearing jeans to a rap concert as opposed to the rodeo and rock concert that my white colleagues were told? All these different things started popping up into my head, and it really took me to a dark, dark spot that I wrote about, that I think you have there. Once again, it tested the progress I had made up to that point in repairing my mental health from the ABC days.
The only reason you said, because you were there with your roommate?
George, my partner.
You were there with your partner.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but you said it was your friend who found you and then set up an intervention, correct?
So George had gone off to work, but I knew that morning in October 2018 that I didn't want to live anymore. I had prepared my will. I had flushed the toilet, made sure everything is put together. I don't know why I was worried about those minor things, but not about what would happen if I jumped from the 12th floor of my building down to the ground below. But this is what's going in through your mind when you've worn yourself out, or at least when I wore myself out to that point. So George had already gone. I texted goodbye to a friend of mine who's in Atlanta at the time. And then she put out an APB, an all points bulletin, to all of our friends to try to get over there as soon as possible. And Mike Woods just so happens to be the first one, the Fox 5 New York weatherman, happened to be the first person to get there and to find me on the floor of my kitchen.
You said the only reason you didn't do it was because of what? Was it because of something you had taken that you were too weak to jump, or
Ambien kicked in?
And you fell asleep.
Fell back.
You fell backwards.
Yeah.
And he found you on the floor.
Yeah.
And then what?
And then I went to bed, and I woke up, and my producer for World News Now, and my partner George, and Mike, as well as Dan Macedo, my old co-anchor at ABC, who was still at ABC, were all gathered there. They had all come over to try to help. And they said, you know what, we're going to take you and put you back into, or we're going to put you, we set up an appointment for you to meet a therapist tomorrow. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. And Don, I don't know what it is about our mentality, or maybe it's my commitment to the show, because, you know, when you work the overnight shows, it's a lot of work to get people in if you call out sick. But I still went to work that night after I got to the point where I wanted to kill myself. And to think back on those days, I don't understand why, or why I did not find it so important to just kind of say, you know what, I'm going to step back and take a day. And then 2 days later, I went on a trip to Singapore for a shoot for us. It's weird and wild to think about now in hindsight, what we put ourselves through.
So it's like a form of Stockholm syndrome, right? And then, and then once you step out of it, you realize, like, well, what's the big deal? Like, why did I care so much about this? Look, let's talk about mental health in the United States. Another reason I'm doing it, as you know, I've suffered from depression. I'm very transparent about it. I think we should take the stigma off of mental health. I think that people should get therapy. I think that you should talk, especially as Black folks, we should not be saying, you know what, yeah, you just need Jesus and you don't need a therapist. And you should be telling your business to somebody you don't know, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, so mental health. 26 million Americans suffer from depression. 11% of the population experience panic attacks, and an estimated 600,000 are victims of child abuse. Kendis Gibson experienced all of those in his life and interviewed leading doctors in these fields. That's in your book. Now let's talk about another, before I want to put all these stats out there and then let you talk about it. And then you talk about that in Black media. Gibson's name was at the forefront of a racial scandal in ABC, as you said, 2020 garnered international headlines. And then, so you talked about the pitfalls and the positives of being Black in the current media landscape. Okay. And then how did you discover psychedelics? And was it through Oprah? Was it through Jada Pinkett? Because there's a lot, honestly, there's a lot that I discovered through Oprah about self-help, about therapy, about journaling, about a lot of stuff, you know, from the old Oprah Winfrey show. Yeah. Right. Back with the Yanla, before Dr. Oz. Yanla was the original Oprah star, right? Yes. Okay. So when did you discover psychedelics, and how did it help you?
So I didn't know that, it was 2020, early 2020. I was traveling to Belize to speak. I'm from Belize, Central America, and I go back once in a while. And I was speaking with some journalists back there to do some programs on some fellowship programs, as we do once in a while. And a good family friend, a Rastafarian, he was like, hey, let's go to this part of the country that we rarely ever go to. It's near Guatemala. And so we drove there and spent an overnight, and he's like, we should go to the Mayan ruins, because I hadn't been to this particular Mayan ruin before as a child. And I'm like, sure. So we get to going out there. He's smoking up a joint as we're driving. I don't smoke weed. And he's like, oh, I have something else. And he just crushed up some mushrooms, some raw mushrooms, magic mushrooms, and put it in orange juice. And I was hesitant at first, because I'm terrible at drugs, which is a good thing, I guess. You know, when I've smoked weed, I've thrown up on it. I'm not big on any sort of drugs.
That's why I was surprised when you said that you took Ambien as a drug, right? I was surprised, because you were never like a drug kind of person. You didn't even drink that much.
No, I know. I've made up for it. I didn't. I was such conservative, straight lace, and so now to be like talking about this stuff is a complete 180. But so he gave me some of it. I was like, all right, I don't know what impact it'll have. Maybe it'll make the roads a little crazy or whatever. And so I accidentally drank both of our doses. So I took what would be considered a major dose of psilocybin and magic mushrooms in orange juice. And orange juice helps to activate the acids in the mushrooms and makes it work quicker. And we started driving we had miscalculated how long the drive would last. And so as we're still driving in this gravelly road, the mushrooms start kicking in.
Uh-oh.
And the trees start, craving in on me. The potholes became craters. And finally, after like a bare knuckle drive for an hour instead of a half hour as we calculated, we made it to the Mayan ruin, and it was just absolutely beautiful. I climbed to the top, stood out there at the top, looking out at the country like Thanos, kind of. But I returned to New York, Don, and COVID was
Raging.
I was getting into high gear. I lived on the Upper West Side, and we lived next to a hospital, and a lot of ambulances would drive by. It would be the soundtrack, really, of that spring for New York, and it was not depressing. I would go back to my job at ABC and MSNBC, which at the time I thought was wasting my talent because I would only work the weekends and do nothing during the week. And my mind had completely changed.
I remember your text about that.
Yes.
You used to text me about, and I was like, just keep going. Remember, Kendis, I was on the weekend forever.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And then, but you weren't depressed. You were just like, whatever.
Yeah. I was like, oh, this is great.
Did you have joy about it? Did you have joy about it? Or was it just like, it is what it is, but you did not feel all of that sort of negativity and the lows?
I still had PTSD from ABC because whenever something would get said, I would be like, oh, wait, what's going on? Or by not being used as much during the week, I thought, am I being marginalized again? What is going on? And so it really had just rewired my brain. I got back to MSNBC. I'm like, this is great. I'm like the highest paid anchor per hour. I have all this opportunity to do whatever I want during the week. One of my neighbors during early COVID did something that I was not able to, and I heard it. We were walking in from the park, and he jumped from the 16th floor into the courtyard.
You heard it?
Yeah, we heard it. And I thought that would be a triggering thing for me once again. It's weird to say, but I kind of felt relieved for him because I know how you get to that point. But it did not have that triggering impact on my mental health. I was able to just kind of embrace it. And then I started talking to some friends and said, I don't know what's changed because nothing fundamentally in my life has changed. In fact, it's gotten a little bit worse. We lost some friends during COVID, and I still have this positive attitude. What is going on? And they said, I told them what happened in Belize, and they were like, it's probably the mushrooms. And so I took a deep dive into psychedelics and magic mushrooms after that. And
okay, let's. I'm going to get to that. A couple of things though. So, had you done just regular SSRIs, or had you gone on any of the things like what is it, Zoloft,
Prozac, Wellbutrin?
Wellbutrin. Had you done all that?
Yeah, I've done all of that. I even did over the counter when we met. I was doing in Philadelphia, St. John's Wort.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah.
You remember the I don't know if you were still there when I had the record store thing where they accused me of shoplifting, and then it was really public, and that was my first foray into depressions. I started taking Zoloft then because I don't think people understand, like things happen to them and they sort of go through it with their family or personally. When it happens to us, it's on the front page of the New York Times or the New York Post, and that everyone you see on the street is like, oh my God, hey, Kendis, I'm so sorry that happened to you, or Don, or whatever. And so, it complicates it. And so
it really does. So I had done Zoloft, I have on and off, and did Prozac as well.
And it worked for you.
It worked, but Don, I don't know your experience with it, but for me, and everybody's experience is different with all of these drugs. But for me, while it did not make me get really, really low, it didn't make me get high as far as happiness either. And I felt because I wasn't doing therapy with those at the time, it was basically just kind of suppressing all of those feelings that I had. And once in a while, it would break like a dam, and it would be some of the worst crying and and depression ever. And as you know, for many SSRIs, a side effect is suicidal tendencies.
Yeah. What is it? Suicidal ideation. Do you did it sort of make you numb, you believe?
Oh yeah, it
Yeah.
made me numb to everything. I wouldn't feel a low at all.
Okay, understood. Someone asked, did any of the over-the-counter medication work, like St. John's Wort or any of that stuff? Not really.
Not really.
No. Okay. Okay. So when I had the CNN Plus show, I don't know if you remember, I had the Don Lemon show on CNN Plus,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
one of the things that
RIP.
I did it on, yeah, RIP, right? I did it on exactly what you're talking about here. And members of the military who said that they had PTSD, that they were suicidal, they could barely leave their rooms. They, I shouldn't say that word because then it'll screw up the algorithm, or they'll suppress us. They wanted to off themselves, but they said they started doing psychedelics, and they were fine. It was like nothing else that they had ever done, and that's your experience.
So that was my experience. And listen, I'm not promoting it for anybody's lifestyle at all. I'm
Check
just
with your doctor, right? Do your
exactly. I'm just saying what I had a positive experience with. And it's when you use these things from a therapeutic standpoint and not necessarily as much as a recreational standpoint. I know a lot of people are doing the microdosing and such, and yes, it can have some positive impact, but when you use them as a therapeutic standpoint, then you really get the benefits out of it. It has been shown in many, many studies what impact it has had on so many military members, positive impacts that psilocybin, even MDMA, are having on so many military members who are suffering from PTSD, because what some of the doctors that I interviewed in the book, 5 Trips, mentioned is that what they've done in the study group with MDMA in particular, you take MDMA, you sit with the drug. It's magic, ecstasy, as it's called, the street name. You sit with the drug, you have it go through your system while you're having a conversation. And what it allows you to do is to be able to have that trauma that you're still suffering from enter that room. You can talk through that trauma and not be stressed from it being there. And you're able to address those demons in that room, in essence, that mental room right there, thanks to the MDMA.
You also have epiphanies. I've had my experience in this, by the way. Also have epiphanies where you may have something may happen in your life, or you may have an issue with someone, and the clarity comes to you, and you don't really worry about it. You're like, I had something about someone who, just as an example, I don't know if you had this, someone I really respected, and they were mad at me for something, and I felt terrible about it. And in my session with my therapist, I came to the realization like that they were a young soul, and that they would eventually come around. And 2 months later, it's exactly what happened. Because they're just very sensitive to criticism, where I am not. Perhaps it's, I don't know, maybe I just internalize it, I don't know. But did you have any sort of experience like that, any sort of epiphany or any sort of vision? Maybe it wasn't even just a vision. I shouldn't say that. It's just that you're able to process it.
So I had a couple of epiphanies. One, when sitting with MDMA with a therapist out in Arizona, and I was able, sorry, Don.
No, it's all right.
Little doggies.
Look, my audience loves it. I have 3 dogs. They bark all the time. I told them, I have a studio that I don't go to because my audience likes, I'm in my dining room. This is what they like. They're like, we don't need cable news. You look like you're on cable news again. We want you in your home. So the dogs are great. They will love you even more for the dog.
No, that's great. So, and that's part of our therapy as well. The having those fur babies. So by sitting there with the MDMA and talking through the trauma that I suffered, including being sexually abused by one of my brothers starting at 6 years old. The first person I kissed in Belize disappeared after that night. I found his body a few days later. In the hindsight, he probably drowned, and that's what we believed happened. But as a 9-year-old, that was traumatizing, especially in a country where homosexuality was in the Constitution as being against the law. So there was all of that trauma, and I was able to sit with that and discuss it while on MDMA. and had this epiphany of just forgiveness, to forgive that loved one and forgive Manny, the kid that died. Who I didn't need to forgive him. But by just being able to blurt out and just have this forgiving feeling for both of them, I just felt such a weight that came off of me as a result of that. The other one being a psilocybin trip that I did in upstate New York. I didn't know what I was still suffering from by this point in my journey. But we did some magic mushrooms, again, crushed up and in some sort of citrus. And all my ancestors, the recent ones, my aunt had died 2 months earlier. My nephew was killed earlier that year. My dad, who had died decades ago, they were all right here next to me. And throughout the whole process, I couldn't see them, but I could feel their energy, their soul right there. And throughout the whole session that I'm on magic mushrooms, this part of my body just kept banging from the wall back into my body. And I just started scraping my foot to the point that the top of my heel, or the top of my foot, bled from my heel, just kind of rubbing it raw. They just were there with, literally, like, it felt like they were there with whips and chains to basically knock some sense into me. And what I got from that, Don, I have had an obsession with white people. We grew up in a colonial racist country in Belize, in Central America, where as a kid, when my mom was pregnant with one of my brothers, she went to go see Princess Margaret, the Queen's sister, because she was told that if you see a pretty lady, your daughter will come out pretty. So Princess Margaret was considered the epitome of pretty at the
beauty,
time,
yeah,
of beauty at the time. And my mom neither had a daughter, and my brother isn't pretty. So much for that whole thing. When I got to the States, like as an 11-year-old, I would constantly press my nose because I wanted it to get smaller. I would apply Ambi whitening cream all the time because I wanted it. I saw white kids in the locker room and saw their penises were different than mine. I convinced my doctor to give me circumcision as a 13-year-old, which is pretty awful. I had this obsession with white people being the epitome of what we're supposed to strive for.
Huh.
And the ancestors in that session took me through everything from childbirth, the obsession, what I've done, having a white boyfriend, a partner, always wanting that, and why it hurt me so badly at ABC, because I was trying to have my white bosses and trying to help them out. And for that to get shoved in my face is why it hurt me so badly. And so that epiphany was like, you've been obsessed with this for your entire life. And it made me just realize what a beautiful body I have, how beautiful my soul is. And it was just one of those moments that I stepped away and I'm like, wow, can you all leave now? Because I got it, but this is abusive.
So what is that? So what is that? I have so many questions. What has that done for you?
It's just gave me so much more. You know, Mika Brzezinski has this thing about knowing your value, and I never really knew my value until having these experiences. You know, I've always thought that I was kind of, I always had imposter syndrome. And a lot of it is not knowing that, no, there's a lot to be gained from me, from Kendis Gibson, from this skin, from this culture. And so it really just kind of upended my entire psyche.
You said you had this obsession. You no longer have this obsession?
I don't have that obsession. I still have the partner. Like, but there are a lot of people who will have many of these psychedelic trips and experiences and will have these epiphanies of like, oh, I need to break up with so and so. I need to do this, this, and this. But I don't have this obsession.
Mm.
I still respect and love my white friends and comrades, but I have such an appreciation for what I bring to the table.
It takes a lot of you cojones to admit that. Look, I'm rarely shocked or at a loss for words. I'm at a loss for words that you say that, because I know you, and I never thought that that you would have this obsession. I always looked at you when you came to my probably was a microwave truck, who knows, whatever it was. And you said, oh, someone says there's a new guy in town and he looks like, I looked at it, I was like, I don't look anything. I always thought that you were so good looking. And I always loved your brown skin. I didn't ever want to go out with you or anything like that. But I was like, Kendis you're such a handsome man. It's like you have this sort of Sidney Poitier beauty about you. And you could not see that? You wanted to change that? Why?
I couldn't see it. And this is a recent experience. So it's like within the last 2 years that I had this epiphany of looking in the mirror and realizing that, and looking back and realizing this is beautiful. I've had body dysmorphia issues for decades where I'm
You're
like,
one of the most, Kendis has an 8-pack. You used to, I don't know about now. I don't know about now.
not quite.
That is
But
so surprising to me. And it's just shocking to me, because when I look at you, I saw, or I still see, always a beautiful, handsome man whose looks that if I had the opportunity, I would want to emulate.
Yeah, I didn't see that. And I was thankful for that experience to make me realize that.
Is that why you worked out so hard? Maybe, I don't know, because you were always like in great shape. Or
I was always working out hard because of that. Because I'd feel, I'd feel my belly fat and pinch, and be like, "Oh,
I don't care anymore. I don't care." And you know what? You have that. It's like, okay, look, I'm married now. Get away from me. I'm not interested in you. But it's just, wow, that is shocking to me. So what has that done for you to have that sort of realization? Because I'm sure that's only one of a number that you've had, or maybe this was the big one that your ancestors are trying to help you get over, and just say, maybe they were just saying you are beautiful and you are worthy. And so this is one way we're showing you that. So get over it.
Well, that's the thing. Like what I've noticed throughout all these different therapy sessions with different psychedelics, that it has all led to one common place, and it is self-love. When I did ayahuasca in the middle of the jungle of Peru, that was the epiphany. I met my soul in the middle of that jungle, and my soul basically said to me that I need to basically look in the mirror every day and say, I love you. And so I had never even said that to myself. I never understood the importance of self-love. And that experience led me to, once again, finding another way of loving myself besides my soul, was to also love my body and my frame and everything else. And that's what that last psilocybin magic mushroom trip in upstate New York taught me. But it is all about self-love for yourself, self-love, at least from my experience. And one other thing that I found, Don, about plant medicine, and you have some experience in some of psychedelics, so you know this. If you take an Ambien and I take an Ambien, we both fall asleep. If we take a painkiller, we both, it'll take care of the headaches we might have. When you take a certain psychedelic or plant medicine, it's the only unique medicine that's out there. What you get out of it, even if we get the same dose at the same time and drink it in the same setting, you will get a completely different experience that your mind and your body wants you to get out of it, and a completely different lesson. And so that's been one of the fascinating things for me. And I realized, like, for me, it was a journey of love and loving myself.
Wow. Someone said, Don, I can't believe you're so surprised. Why are you surprised? I don't know. I just am. I'm just being honest. Look, Kendis and I, again, we've known each other for a long time. I feel like we're just on the phone talking to each other. I forget that we go everywhere. People are going to talk about it.
Yeah.
They don't talk.
And I've seen some of the comments. Thank you guys for some of the comments.
Yeah. They do withdrawals. Not so. Was that the only epiphany you had, or is there anything else that you'd like to reveal to me, Kendis?
Like overall self-love, and early on giving the forgiveness.
Did you forgive Barbara Fedita?
Listen, I don't know what's in her heart. I just know that those actions nearly cost me my life. I forgive her and ABC in the sense that it allowed me to get on this journey of self-discovery. Because if not for those experiences, I would not have been where I am right now. So I'm thankful and appreciative of that overall.
Are you able to? Do you have more empathy? You talk about self-love. Do you have more empathy for others now? Do you see people in a different way? Do you see them? I wrote a book about religion where I say instead of, trying to create, most people are trying to create God in their own image, right? And when they should be looking for God in other people, the God in other people.
Yeah.
Do you have anything like that?
Well, listen, I at the end of this journey, I realized that I kind of had a spiritual awakening. I had issues with the spirit world. When you grow up in the South or you grow up in the Caribbean, you think about Obia and you're fearful of the spirit world. And it sounds kind of weird, but I was able to embrace the spirit world and had this awakening of an awareness and keen awareness of my spirit and my soul. And that's what I got out of this entire journey, besides that self-love. So
yeah.
So that was what I got out of it. I did so many of these different experiences. Go ahead, Don.
Did you feel different? Because I felt like, since we're talking, I always felt like you were sort of chasing something, right? Because we said parallel career. And I felt like, I wonder if Kendis is going to, and you would talk to me about it.
Yeah.
But I wonder, like, do you feel like you have to chase any more things anymore?
No, I feel like we were both at the same point in our career. And then you shot yourself out of a cannon, and I did as well. I went to CNN early on as well as a correspondent and an anchor. I was chasing happiness, and I kept going and going and going and going on this network hamster wheel, and just saying, okay, I'm not happy with my current situation because of this, this, and this. Maybe if this next job will do it. And I kept doing that 13 times, Don, is how many jobs I've had. 13 times. And it wasn't until I took this break and started this journey that I realized like that the end point is not the goal. Like today is the goal. And to just be appreciative of where I am and what I'm doing. And I was just like, wait, it took you 20, 30 years to tell me this for me to figure it out?
I'm sitting here because I feel the same thing. I was always, look, I just loved what I did. And was I chasing success? Yes, but I was having success just because I loved it. And I just, if you know me, if you watch me on CNN, I'm the same way on camera as off camera, right?
Yep.
And people are like, one of my bosses said, I'm going to get you a sign that for the anchor desk to say, you are on television. Remember, you are on television. And I think that was a big part of my success. And still is, but I think it's also a big part of why I'm not there, because you can be too real for people. Sometimes you can't bring your entire self to work, or because people don't understand that, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they're just sort of recoil because they don't have that sense of awareness or autonomy where you're just sort of free to be yourself. And so I'm so glad that you are on this journey. So anyway, so where I was going was I went away on vacation for Thanksgiving holidays. And I was on this walk with my friends. We did like a 7-mile walk around the island that we were on in the Caribbean, and the hills are crazy, like whatever. And we got to this point where the ocean was on one side, and or the bay was on one side, and then the cemetery was on the other side, and we're on this walk. And I said, it's either this or that. So while I'm over here on this side, I'm going to enjoy all of this, regardless of where I am in my career or with anything. And I, sitting there walking with my husband or whatever. And I was like, damn, you have a really good life. And sometimes you have those moments of awareness.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you would ever if you believe that you would ever have those moments of awareness and that were so profound as that you've had with the plant-based medicine. Do you think it would have come later, or do you think it may not have come at all?
So in the plant-based medicine community, we feel as if you're drawn to certain plants and you're drawn to certain experiences. Like my trip to Peru in the middle of the jungle and doing ayahuasca had its seeds years earlier when a producer mentioned it to me. And I was like, oh, that's some crazy white people stuff. And then one thing led to another. I was having a conversation with a guy that I met who does environmental work in the Amazon, and he brought it up again and talked about how it helps people with their mental health. And conversations led to another, and then boom, I quit my job in Miami after being there 6 months, woke up 3 days later and said, you know what, it's time. I want to do ayahuasca. And I'm like, where did that voice come from? That tells me I'm going to do ayahuasca. And so I think even if I had not discovered plant medicine, they would have discovered me, because they knew that this was a way for me to survive. And I know this sounds kind of weird and hooey and all that kind of stuff, and I'm not that person when I started this whole process, but I entirely believe it. The shaman says that it just draws you to it. So while a lot of people are doing ayahuasca and these different plant medicines, you have to listen to that calling first, instead of just saying, I'm just going to do it in a yoga studio somewhere. Just wait. You'll know when it's time. And there's another thing from the shaman, by the way, Don, when I did ayahuasca. And I did it 2 times, and it was right after the Will Smith slap at the Oscars. And I'm like, how is this supposed to help make your life so much better? Will Smith did it 11 times. And the shaman was like, in Spanish, like, it doesn't stop you from being an asshole.
Well, look, I think, and Will did something else. There's something else that's beyond ayahuasca that I'm told that is a much more, and it's in full transparency, I won't tell about the conversation, but after that, I met with Will Smith. I was trying to get him on the show, and we met at a hotel here in New York and had a conversation. We sat in like like this conference room sort of thing, private conference room, and we just sat and talked, and he talked to me about his experience on with plant-based medicine and where he was in his life. And it was just he felt different than when I had spoken to Will before. He felt different, but I think that had happened after the slap.
Okay.
That was after the slap. So I don't want to call the man a what, but
listen, I'm just quoting the shaman.
Someone asked in the chat, did you get over your obsession with white people? I think I asked that to you, didn't I?
Yeah, I mean, I it's not that I got over my obsession with it. I
you realized it, and you're like, I move on.
I got under my obsession with me.
Yeah.
It wasn't, I still respect. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'm good with me.
Well, speaking of plant-based medicine here, let's talk about your book. You said, from Oprah to Jada Pinkett Smith and beyond, many have spoken about the positive effects of plant-based medicine in addressing mental health. You interviewed the leading experts in the field using these centuries-old substances to help patients. You describe how psychedelics helped you overcome and come to terms with PTSD from your childhood trauma, whatever, depression, wanting to off yourself depression, and racial trauma as well. I don't think that we talk enough as Black people about the racial trauma that we have, or the emotional pain body, the generational emotional pain body that we carry around. How did this affect that?
So I didn't even realize that that term existed until I met a doctor, psychotherapist in New York, Dr. Gillian Scott Ward, through somebody I was helping writing the book for. And I did several sessions with her as a patient. And we talked about my experiences all over the years, and in Belize, as well as my obsession, and as well as the experience at ABC. And she's like, diagnosing you with racial trauma. It's a real thing. It's a thing that many of us carry, and we don't realize that we have it. We would get it from the shrapnel, again, to use that term. Seeing the Breonna Taylors and the George Floyds of the world get killed, where our bodies are just not worth anything, and it's something that we carry on, and we never really address it. And so that was, I guess, in essence, that could be considered an epiphany and an aha moment as well, because I didn't know that that was something that needed to be addressed mentally, and I did.
And
I mean, we still live in America. So a lot of these things are still things that we grapple with, whether we know it or not. It's just a matter of how we address it. And so I feel as if I just have a different perspective. I'm not saying I'm looking with the side eye at everybody, but I have a different perspective right now as I go about my life, and what battles I pick and how I pick them.
yeah, it can be really tough. You have to, as they say, you were just saying, pick your battles, because they don't even know. They're just so unaware, and blissfully so, and sort of holier than thou about it. They're so self-assured that it doesn't exist, or that they're not racist, or that they don't have bias, that it doesn't exist to them, but they do. And we're going through, this is going to be a reckoning that we're having now. There's a reason that this is happening. And it's going to be interesting to see what develops from this, and how we come out on the other side as a country. And maybe the awakening is maybe it's for people like you, and for some of the obsession that you said that you had, and maybe it's for awareness too, for people who are not of color, for people who are of the larger culture, to gain some understanding, because the pendulum always swings back.
Yeah,
always swings back. Do you know what I'm saying?
Sometimes it takes a while for it to swing back.
Yeah. And karma is not always instant, if you believe in that, right?
I mean, we had an era, we had Reconstruction in the 1800s. How long did it take for it to swing back?
I had this conversation about Reconstruction with somebody, and it turned into a big old thing because they didn't understand what the hell they were talking about. Yeah.
Listen, Reconstruction was 8 years.
Right.
The Obama presidency was 8 years.
Yeah.
In my brain, that was our modern day of Reconstruction. And what followed Reconstruction? Some of the worst times in the Black community's lives.
Yeah. So listen, you talk about, this is what I want to know. You said that you had panic attacks, that you would, because of the stress of the job and everything. You said, did you have you had an anxiety attack during a Beyonce interview? And
yeah, I almost threw up on the Queen.
You did?
I almost.
What happened?
I was just having sleep issues.
Oh boy, don't I know.
I had flown from Atlanta to LA for the Grammys. This was way back. This is when she performed with Prince. And while she's performing and they're opening up the Grammys in front of with Prince, I'm throwing up in the bathroom there at the Staples Center. And you can hear it. They blast the program all throughout the arena. So I'm hearing the performance and I'm thinking, wow, she's having a career high. And this seems like a low because I'm hugging a toilet and I'm going to speak with Beyonce very soon. I had cultivated a pretty good relationship with Yvette, Beyonce's publicist, longtime publicist.
Yeah, I
And
know
so,
that. Such a
yeah,
great lady.
she's a wonderful lady.
Yeah.
And she's a fan of the book. I told her they're in
Good.
it. And so, um, and so so I've done interviews with Beyonce before over the years during CNN when I was at NBC prior to that. So it wasn't nerves, but I was just unable to think clearly. I was barely able to focus, like visually focus on anything. And so we're sitting there. She gave me 10 minutes, which is a lifetime back then, much less now. And
With Beyonce.
yeah, I had to cut it short at 3 minutes because I felt I was going to throw up. The questions that I asked were dumb, like, "Oh, what was that like with Prince?" and she had just come off her solo career. Are you going to get back with Destiny's Child? Like, um, but
And, it's not good.
I know. Oh, pobrecito. And I had to cut it short and turn my back to her, and like I turned my back to the Queen.
Yeah.
And ran out of there.
Do you know Dan Harris?
Yes.
Yeah. And you know, Dan Harris talks about Dan Harris has some issues similar to yours.
Mm-hmm.
And he was your former colleague on ABC.
Yeah.
And so he was on the show a couple months back in the beginning of the show, towards the beginning. And this is he talked about fronting. And I wonder if you had that experience. Here it is.
A lot of our pain and suffering on a daily basis comes from fronting, from pretending we're something that we're not.
Fronting.
Yeah, that we're just, we've built a brand we've created online that doesn't quite match up with who we know we are. Yeah. And the difference, the delta there is the source of an enormous amount of suffering, I think.
So do you believe in fake it? People say fake it till you make it.
I think a certain amount of that is true, but you don't want to fake it too much so that you're not a real person.
Do you relate to that or no?
I like the doggy thing. Yeah, 100%. And it's tough because you're the same person you are in person as you are on TV and online. And I try to be as authentic as possible. What you see on TV, that same fool is there. But there are so many different days when we're that pageant queen and we are going out there, we put the makeup on and we're still smiling while we are in turmoil underneath. At the network level, we would narrow down to your on-camera period. Like no matter if you didn't sleep last night, no matter if you are going through a cold or whatever, this is how much time you're going to be on TV. And that's the time that you have to perform because any sort of bad hit can make or break your career. And so we are kind of just putting on a show constantly, but I don't want that to get confused with what people see as being inauthentic. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm still my authentic self, and even today. But yes,
you're putting on a good face.
Yeah.
Do you think that our experience is different in this business than others? Because it's a high pressure business, but then we have other hoops that we have to jump through. But so do women.
It's different in the sense that my mom would always say, like, well, how do nurses that work the graveyard shift and such, how do they survive for so many years and you can't survive for 4 years on it? There's so many different pressures that we're working on, besides the fact that we have to present, you're on camera, you're on. We can't be miserable and nasty on TV on any given day. So that adds so much pressure on any given day to us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, Kendis, anything else you want to share? I'm so grateful that you came on and you shared this. And I know this sounds going to sound hollow. I'm so proud of you. I'm so happy for your journey. And I just think that, look, I think you're an incredible person. I've always thought you an incredible person, but I feel you now. You're good.
No, I am good, and we reach out to each other once in a while, and I appreciate your occasional text. I would love for you to make our little meetups more often.
Black folks, what was it called? The black folks, something. Brown folks.
Brown folks connect.
Kendis,
But I have nothing but love for you.
of course.
I really appreciate everything.
I know that. Thank you for sharing that. My question to you is, were you terrified to write this?
No, I was writing it, and in some ways you'll read it. I was writing it thinking I was finished with TV. And so when you read some of the chapters, you realize like, he ain't trying to get back into business. But I wanted to get some relief from all of it. And by revisiting everything that I've gone through, childhood, whatever, it just really, really helped to ease my mind and put me at peace. And so I was happy that I wrote it. And I'll tell you, Don, after I wrote it, finished it in December of last year, just about a year now, I get a text 2 days later from the TV station in New York, Pix, asking if I'd be interested in the job that I have now. It was as if literally I closed that chapter of the book, and then I get a text, and I've been talking to them over the years, but I get a text saying, "Hey, can you be in New York on January 2nd to interview?"
Good for you.
And that's how the universe made that play out.
It's weird. So it's weird, like when you sort of let go of things, you
Mhm.
allow room for things to come in.
Exactly.
Are you surprised by the reception? As someone enters your room, say hi to your other half.
It's George.
Hi,
I
George.
think he's trying to. So the book launch party is tonight.
You got to go. Let me ask you this. Let me ask you one more thing. Are you surprised by the reception? Did you realize it was going to be this big a deal? Because I actually think it's a really big deal.
I had no idea. I
You
had
didn't.
no idea. So I'll tell you one other thing. Like last week, Monday, the Page 6 article hit about the situation at ABC, and then I had to go on air. And it really reading it through somebody else's lens and pen, even though I wrote the book, reading it from somebody else's perspective really kind of hit me. I needed a moment to kind of like gather myself, cry it out, put on the makeup, and get back and like, okay, this story will help other people. But I had no idea that it would go the way it was.
Yeah, it's definitely going to help. Estella W., thank you for your support. Best show ever, Estella says. So you should be. Thank you for your support of
you,
independent
Estella.
media. Let me just say, tell George I said hi. Hi, George. I'm going to let him go so you guys can get dressed. Hi, let me see. George, look, get in camera. Hi, George.
How we doing?
Great. How you doing? It's good to see you.
Good to see you as well.
Take care of this guy, okay?
Will do.
Okay, so listen, the book is called
Five
Trips, an investigative journey into mental health, psychedelic healing, and saving a life. 5 trips, an investigative journey into mental health, psychedelic healing, and saving a life. And it is by Kendis Gibson. Kendis, you the man.
So good to see you.
Good to see you as well. I love you, buddy. You take care. All right. We'll see you soon.
You do the same. All right. Bye.
That's it. I don't have anything else to say. That was great. I love that conversation. I wish I could have more of those. That is one reason why we may not have as many lives, is to make room. And I don't think we are going to have as many lives. If we do a live, you guys, I'll ask, I'm just going to be fully transparent. Do you prefer the 10 a.m. show, Eastern, the Hot Topic show, or do you like the Lemon Live at 5? But because we're leaning towards a 10 a.m. show because we're heavy on news and we get people ready for their day. But let me know. But we would like to make more room for more conversations like this. And sometimes you have to tape those because people aren't always available live to do them. Okay. So make sure you hit the thumbs up. I think it's Maureen. Who else is in the chat saying, hey guys, there aren't enough. I'm in the wrong camera. Hey guys, there aren't enough thumbs up. So make sure you hit the thumbs up before you get out. Okay. Oh, wow. Both Lemon Live. I know people like both. It's kind of crazy. I don't know how we can do Both. How do we do both and still keep our sanity? Do you watch both? Which one do you watch the most? I don't know. Nikki, are you there? Is Nikki
Yes, I
there?
am. Hi.
Nikki, okay? So Nikki and I and the team, we went through this thing. We're like, we're just gonna try 10 o'clock, and then 5 o'clock we're gonna offer content, and maybe it'll be tape content like what we just did. And we were gonna start yesterday, and then people were like, "Why didn't you come on at 5 o'clock? There's so much news. What are you doing? We need to know." Am I lying? And so we had to do like an emergency.
That's exactly what happened.
30 at 6 or 6:30, and Tara Setmeyer, we just had to set it up. So what do we do, Nikki?
I mean, you got to give the people what they want, but
We're
you
only
also have to give the YouTube algorithm what they want.
we're a small team. We're a startup, and we work really, really, really hard. So when we started the show, was this supposed to be a couple episodes a week? I think, was it like 3 episodes a week? I forget. What was it, Nikki?
It was 2 or 3 a week when we started. Now we're up to several a day.
We do 2 a day and sometimes more for hours. We as they say, we tired, y'all. So we'll do a poll. Can you do a poll, Nikki?
I'll put up a community poll so everyone can chime
But you
in.
can't do it in the chat. So let me just go.
Oh, I can do it in the chat.
Just do it in the chat. I want to see what people say. 5 o'clock or 10 o'clock, 5 p.m. live or 10 a.m. And I'll just be honest with you. Estella, thank you for your generous support. That is great. Best show ever, Estella says. And then Tracy Hall, thank you for your generous support of independent media. Really appreciate you as well. And there were others as well, but I was so into that conversation with Kendis. Wasn't that a great conversation, you guys? Did you guys like that? That was good. So again, I'm just being transparent with you guys. We can only do so much. We would like to be able to do more. What did I say I was going to be transparent about? I can't remember. Everyone says both. I'll include both. How are we going to do both, Nikki? It's not possible, is it? It's just not humanly possible, Michael Reich. But thank you for your support. Michael Reich, that's a very interesting contribution that you made. 37.
Very specific.
149. That's very specific, Michael. Worth every penny. Oh, also, Nikki, we're going to start doing memberships. Yeah.
Yes. So just so everyone can be in the know, what we were thinking was the 10 a.m. live show every day, and then 5 p.m. would be kind of a taped take from Don, except we would still plan on doing a live at 5 once a week with a call-in aspect. So our members, this would just be for members, people who join our membership could call in and speak with Don.
I know.
This is the idea. This is what we're working on.
And then at 5:15, the texts will start coming in. Are you late? Are you doing it? Why aren't you doing a show? Where are you? The Lemonheads are waiting for you. The Lemonheads start sending me DMs or whatever, or text or messages on social media. Where are you, Don? Blah, 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 blah. We created a monster. No, but I'm really happy because we created a community, which is exactly what we wanted to do by going live, by creating this community. But can you rebroadcast? But what's the purpose? I think people actually like the connection because I'll log in, and you guys have started the show before me. Right, Nikki, the conversation has already started. You guys are in the chat, and there are many of you, hundreds of you, sometimes thousands of people waiting, and people tune in. Let's just be really honest with them. What does Nikki, YouTube say about our what do you call it, click-through rate or watch rate or something like that? It's really, really, really good.
Yeah, our click-through rate is incredibly high, as well as our average watch duration, which means you guys are staying on and watching us, which we love. But yeah, we're just trying to build more on that algorithm. Got to get some taped content and some live content.
So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to do the best content for you, and the most engaging. And so that doesn't mean like if something big happens that we're not going to come on. So we're going to wait. We'll look 60%. So it's, that's not that far apart. It's like really 60-40.
You also have to consider we're on the 5 p.m. now. So let's see what happens. We'll do the poll again at 10 a.m. and see what happens.
Oh boy, you guys. Okay, so I love talking to you. Um, there's a lot of sound, intelligent conversation in that chat. It says, yeah, multi-crafter. Here's what my one wish I do. Oh, I know what I was going to be transparent with you guys about. But this is my one wish. I don't mind people who do not agree with me on issues politically, no matter who you voted for. I just don't want people to be trolled. I don't want even the Trump supporters to be trolled. And I don't want my, folks who are maybe more liberal to be trolled. If you can come in and state your case and not be a troll, then we're totally cool with that. I'm completely fine with that. It actually makes for a better conversation. But we can't have trolls who are calling people names in the comments or just there, right? It's just there just so you can be a troll or to upset people or to own the libs or whatever it is, or to own the Trump supporters or the MAGA people. You just can't have it. So Veracity's K 2020 says, if Midas Touch can hit 4 million, you can do even more. Yes. And we love our Midas Touch, brothers and sisters. Don't get me wrong. But yeah, we can do even more. But we're new. How long have they been around, Nikki? They've been around for a couple of years. We've talked to them about all of this.
Yeah, it's definitely been a few years.
It's been a few years. We've only been around like 8 or 9 months. So yeah, they can't help themselves from being trolls. Yes, I agree with that. Here's a transparent thing. So you never have to reinvent the wheel. The things that I really liked on television, it may seem corny to you, and it doesn't seem like it is relatable to this sort of streaming thing. My favorite. So I love The View. I love all the women on The View. They're great. They're great. Every single one of them is a friend. I know every single one of them. I spend time with every single one of them. But I really liked how Wendy Williams did her Hot Topics panel, because The View created Hot Topics. And I liked the way that she just sat there and just talked about, she just shot the shit. And so I can do that. Like, I have the ability to be able to just talk to a wall, and not everybody can do that. And so that's why I created the Hot Topics show, because I wanted to get people going about their day. Maybe it was for things that weren't so political, weren't so hard. We could do entertainment. We started, I think it was during the Diddy era, right? Nikki, when we started doing the Hot Topics, it was around that era. So we were going to
it was around then.
Yeah. So we're going to do things that are not necessarily that's lighter, but it's just not politics. And by the way, it's very tough to monetize around politics. Advertisers don't like it. Brand safety, they're worried, the whole Bud Light of it all. So they get nervous about that. Most trolls come from Candace Owens. It says Dan Sabo. Look, I had a perfectly fine conversation with Candace Owens. She is who she is. I am who I am. I'm fine with it. And there's no need to be a troll. And so I took the best of that because I liked it. I think Wendy was very talented, and was just sort of what she just sat there and did. I thought was quite amazing. And then at 5 o'clock, I grew up coming to New York to visit my aunt, and I would watch Live at 5 every day with Sue Simmons and Chuck Scarborough. And I thought it was just a great, entertaining, informative show that did hard news and then light news, then interviews or whatever. It was great. If anybody who's old enough of a certain age and remember Live at 5, you'll know what I'm talking about. Wendy was original, says Angela Porter. Yes. So Wendy did not create the Hot Topic franchise. That was Barbara Walters and the folks over at The View, Bill Getty, and etc. That was those folks who were over there, and probably Dusty, who was the executive producer or one of the senior producers on the show. And so, yeah. And so then shout out to Sue Simmons, right? Sue Simmons, one of the most talented and authentic people, especially a Black woman who survived in this business for a long time and sort of, invented a lot of it, was a mentor, a hero of mine, I should say, someone that I looked up to. So those two things, that's why I have Lemon Live at 5. There's alliteration, and also it's something that is from my childhood. So something that I just admired. So there you go. We'll figure it out. But I love you guys. Thank you for helping us build this community. It's the Lemonation. We are a part of the Lemonation, and it is the Lemon Heads. And so I love you. We're also going to try some merch. We're going to just do fun, new things. Okay? So hit the thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe. Call your friends and loved ones and even people you don't like and tell them to subscribe to our content so that more people. Yes, look, Bernie C says Larry King. I love Larry King. And I tell you why, because Larry King was a conversationalist, not an interviewer. And there are too many people who are on television now who are just interviewing people. So what Kendis and I just did was a conversation. It wasn't an interview. And so that's why he was able to relax and to share things that he wouldn't normally share. So yeah. Wendy repeatedly said that she wanted to be the female Howard Stern, says a disco ball glitter. Yes. And, you know, she's in the Radio Hall of Fame like Howard Stern as well. Okay, guys, I've rambled and talked enough, but so we'll figure it out. Don't get mad if we only decide to do one live show. It's going to be tough. R.I.P. Larry King, says Andrew Mack. I agree. Those are the good old days. I loved watching the network CNN when Larry King was on. Larry King was an amazing conversationalist. Okay. We shall see you next time. 10 o'clock tomorrow. We'll see you. Eastern. Thanks for watching, everyone. Make sure you hit the like button. It helps us with the algorithm. And also, we'd love for you to become a subscriber. So hit that button too. We're live every day at 10 a.m. Eastern Time and 5 p.m. Eastern.